remaining steadfast upon it in all circumstances without turning to anything else, guarding one's resolve so that reliance is upon Allah alone. So التمسك بحبل الله المتين والثبات عليه في كل حال وعدم الالتفاف إلى غيره من الوسائل أو السبل مهما كانت مغرية مع إحكام العزم على ألا يكون الاعتماد إلا على الله وحده. So what do we mean by al-i'tisam based on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about al-i'tisam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Holy Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, in Surah Al Imran. And hold firmly to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all together and do not become divided. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to hold firmly as a group, all of us, to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously, there is here a stress on holding firm while having knowledge. So how would you hold firm to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without educating yourself about who is Allah? How do you hold firm? What is the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What are the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What are the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What did Allah forbid us from doing? All of these things. So you cannot hold firm onto the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without education, without knowledge. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So knowledge is a key here. And the other thing which is extremely important, so without division or distraction. So جميعا, so here unity is extremely important, which means you cannot, another way of saying it is that Yadullahi ma'al jama'a. There are many ahadith, Yadullahi ma'al jama'a, and so the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands are with the group. So Allah is always with the group. You can never be right if you are opposing all Muslims. If you are opposing everyone, know that there is something wrong. Know that there is something wrong. So knowledge here is extremely important, and you need to be always with the jama'ah. And the other thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran also, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And whoever has reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for him. So we ask ourselves, holding firm onto the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or holding fast onto the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are its stages? For sure it will have stages. What are these stages? So the first one is heart conviction. So al-i'tiqad al-qalbi, that you are certain, you have certainty that none suffices except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you can never depend on anyone, any deity except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That no one and no entity will be sufficient to you but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is how you would hold firm and hold fast onto Allah's rope at your heart level. But then, does it stop at the heart level? No. It moves on to the second level, which is التمسك بالكتاب والسنة, clinging to Quran and Sunnah, making sure that, making Allah's guidance the definitive way of life. So you cannot have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the center of your life and having your life completely circling around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without sticking to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the third one here is morals, character. That needs to reflect on how you handle yourself, how you behave. And this is where al-i'tisam fi suluk wal-akhlaq. So this is practice in conduct. Your conduct would be based on Quran and Sunnah. And now we ask ourselves that regular question. What are the implications? What would this lead to? And the first one here is obviously inner peace. When you know that Allah is with you all the time, when you know that you are not trying to please anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you know that at the end of the day you are only seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with every action that you are doing, you will simply have an inner peace. You will have tranquility. You will have no elimination of confusion and of unrest. You will have firmness on the right path, and regardless of whichever trials that you are to go to, you will have strength against temptations, against anything, any seductions, any temptations that are trying to get you away from the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obviously the desires. And you will have your entire life going across or following the approach that is based on divine guidance. So we need to ask ourselves a very, very important question here. When we talk about al-i'tisam bihablillah, what is its relationship to Tawheed? You all know Tawheed, right? Tawheed, and it has Tawheed al-uluhiyya and Tawheed al-rububiyyah. So that you know that there is only one Rabb, one creator for the entire universe, and that there is only one Lord to worship. If I ask you a question, based on what we said so far about al-i'tisam, what is the relationship between i'tisam and Tawheed? Quiz question. What is the relationship? Is one of them the consequence of the other? Are both of them at the same level? Is one of them the result of the other? What would you think the consequence, the actual relationship is? Yes. Al-i'tisam, jazakumullah khairan. Al-i'tisam is the embodiment of Tawheed. I'tisam is Tawheed in action. Practical Tawheed. Because you cannot have Tawheed without demonstrating it on the ground. So i'tisam is a demonstration. It's Tawheed showing in your actions, showing in how you handle yourself, showing in how you conduct your life. And now we need to ask ourselves the regular question that we end typically our talk with, which is practically, tell me, how do I lead, how do I reach this level of al-i'tisam? So obviously you need to have the deep belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is given in everything that we are doing, but more importantly in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That no one can harm you but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can benefit you but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one is worthy of being pleased but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being obeyed but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's number one. Number two, living Quran. Subhanallah, in each and every one of these stations, living Quran, not reading Quran, not memorizing Quran, not understanding Quran, living Quran. And subhanAllah, we are approaching the month of Quran. And this is where we need to set our intentions, that in order for me to hold firm onto the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the hold firm onto the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to live Quran. I need to be having that special relationship with Quran. May Allah make us all among the people of Quran. And obviously, living on the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, and studying the seerah and understanding the challenges that the Prophet ﷺ has gone through, understanding whatever hurdles that the Prophet ﷺ had to take on in order for him to relay the message to you and I, understanding that this is the greatest manifestation of al-i'tisam. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. And obviously, moving away from everything that, or striving to get away from everything that can drift you away or push you away and pull you away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So finally, dua. And subhanallah, it's extremely important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything. But when you are to read وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا دُخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً. These verses that are calling you وَتُوبُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا أَيُّهَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. These verses that are calling for a unanimous and unwavering belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you are udkhulu fi silmi kafa, where you are taking Islam entirely, when you are not picking and choosing from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you go through these verses, immediately make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make you among those. May Allah make us among those people that are embodying Tawheed. May Allah make us among those people that live the meanings of Tawheed and live the meaning of I'tisam, and more importantly, devote their entire lives. And may Allah make our families and our progenies among those that are devoting their entire lives for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the pleasure and seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Don't forget to make salah upon the Prophet ﷺ at this night and throughout Friday. وجزاكم الله خيرا.